Welcome back to Mystic English, where every story teaches you not just English, but something your heart has been trying to understand for years. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, not just to improve your language, but to connect with stories that might just reconnect you to yourself. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your day ended, but you don't remember where it went? You woke up, scrolled for a while, maybe had coffee, answered some texts, did a few things, and suddenly the sun was setting. You weren't resting. You weren't really working either. You were surviving. And that's the scariest part. Not that you're wasting time, but that you don't even notice it slipping away. This story is for you, because maybe your life isn't broken. Maybe you're just not protecting the one thing that could fix it. This is the story of David, and the one sacred hour that rebuilt his life. David wasn't failing. In fact, from the outside, he was doing great. A software engineer with a good job, a rented studio in a nice city, and a side hustle he hoped to scale into something bigger. Smart, ambitious, focused, at least in theory. But deep inside, David was stuck in a loop. Every morning started with a plan. Today, he would make progress. He'd write that pitch deck, clean up the app code, reply to those 3 important emails, and finally, start preparing for that job switch he'd been thinking about for months. But the day would begin, and quietly unravel. He would check Slack, read the news, watch a podcast clip, then another, and suddenly it was 11:30 a.m., and his mind was too foggy to start anything serious. So, he'd tell himself he'd work in the evening, but by then, life would get in the way again. A call, a distraction, a wave of tiredness. At night, he'd stare at his ceiling, wondering where the day went, again. This cycle repeated, not for days, but for years, until one night a simple sentence hit him like lightning. It was a line from a Mystic English video he found by accident. "You're not losing your day in the middle. You're losing it in the first hour." That line sat in his chest like a rock, because deep down, he knew it was true. The mornings weren't just quiet. They were bleeding away his identity. The truth was, David didn't need more time. He needed one sacred hour. 1 hour a day that was only his. No noise, no apps, no replies. Just deep, protected work. Not busy work, meaningful work. So the next morning, David did something he hadn't done in years. He woke up, made coffee, and didn't touch his phone. He didn't check his email, he didn't scroll. He sat down, with nothing but a notebook, and wrote a question at the top of the page. What is one problem in my life that if I solved it, everything else would improve? He stared at that page for 10 minutes. Then, he started writing. Not perfect words, not a plan, just thoughts. Raw, honest, unfiltered. That 1 hour passed slowly, but something strange happened after. David felt clear, not energized, not motivated, just aligned. It was the first time in months that he felt like the owner of his day, and so he did it again the next day. And the next. It wasn't magic. Some days were still messy, some mornings were blank, but something deep had shifted. And in that shift, his life quietly began to change. Soon, that 1 hour each morning became David's non-negotiable. He chose the same chair, the same mug, same pen. It wasn't just a routine, it was a ritual. The world could wait. Messages could wait. That 1 hour wasn't about being productive. It was about remembering who he was and what he was here to build. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was designing, not just ideas, but a future, a direction. And that changed everything. The app he had shelved for 6 months? He started rewriting the core logic, not because he felt pressured, but because clarity made it obvious what had to be done. His job that he secretly wanted to leave, he began preparing for interviews again, not frantically, but calmly, because now there was a quiet conviction behind his decisions. Even his friends noticed the difference. He wasn't always in a rush anymore. He had fewer outbursts. He listened more. Because clarity doesn't just change how you work, it changes how you show up in the world. But then something unexpected happened. One morning, David sat down, and nothing came. No thoughts, no clarity, just blank space and racing thoughts. He tried to push through, but he felt disconnected. For the first time in weeks, the hour felt hollow. And that scared him. Was the magic gone? Had it been a fluke? That's when he remembered another lesson from the same Mystic English video, one that he had overlooked. It's not hard to build momentum. It's hard to protect it. That line stayed with him, because it wasn't just about having the hour. It was about preparing for it. You don't lose the hour in the middle. You lose it in the 5 minutes before it begins. David realized he'd made a mistake that morning. He'd peeked at Slack. Just one message, just 5 minutes. But that was all it took. His mind was no longer his. It was already hijacked by someone else's priorities. So he made a new rule. His phone would sleep in another room. The laptop would stay closed until after. Only pen, paper, and himself. He even told his manager, from 7 to 8 a.m., he was unavailable. No calls, no exceptions. And something surprising happened. They respected it, because when you respect your hour, others do too. That single hour wasn't just a productivity trick anymore. It was a statement, a quiet rebellion against the noise of the world, a declaration that said, "This part of my life is mine." In those 60 minutes, David wasn't an employee, wasn't a son, wasn't a friend. He was just David, the builder, the thinker, the creator, the version of himself that he was always meant to be. The weeks passed, and the 1-hour rule became David's anchor, the still point in a world that kept spinning too fast. But it wasn't just about focus anymore. It was healing. Because in those quiet mornings, away from the pressure and pretending, David started asking questions he had been avoiding for years. Not just about work, about life, about meaning, about why, even when he achieved things, it still felt like something was missing. That's when he wrote a sentence that cracked something open inside him. "I am scared that I've been chasing goals I don't even believe in anymore." That day, David didn't build anything. He didn't solve a problem or check off a list. He sat there, tears quietly rolling down his face, not from sadness, but from truth, because for the first time, he wasn't lying to himself. And that's what that one sacred hour had really given him. Not productivity, not motivation, but honesty. A space where he could meet himself without the masks, the noise, the need to impress. And that's where real change begins, not with a planner or a 5 a.m. alarm, but with honesty. Soon, things outside began to shift too. David didn't just work better. He started living better. His relationships deepened because he wasn't hiding anymore. He laughed more. He listened more. And strangely, he felt less rushed, because when you know what matters, you stop being controlled by what doesn't. He even started mentoring a few juniors at work, not because it was his job, but because he genuinely wanted to help someone else escape the loop he had been stuck in for so long. One day, a friend asked him, "Man, what changed? You seem different." David smiled and simply said, "I started protecting 1 hour that changed everything else." That's the gift of the 1-hour rule. It's not about getting more done, it's about becoming someone you actually recognize. One morning, weeks after this quiet transformation had begun, David sat in his favorite chair, warm coffee in hand, sun slowly rising outside. He opened his notebook and wrote just 3 words. "I feel alive." And for someone who had once felt like he was sleeping through his own life, that was a revolution. He remembered the version of himself who used to open his eyes and feel nothing, who scrolled through other people's wins just to avoid looking at his own confusion, who called himself lazy when the truth was he was just lost in the noise. And he thought, how many people out there are still living like that? Maybe someone is watching this video right now, maybe you. So let me speak directly to you. If you're tired of waking up and feeling like the day already owns you, if you've been confusing exhaustion with failure, distraction with laziness, busyness with purpose, if you've been telling yourself, I'll start when I have more time, brother, sister, let me give you the same truth David discovered. You don't need more time. You need 1 hour. One sacred hour that belongs to you. No pings, no pressure, no pretending. 1 hour to build, to think, to remember what you care about. 1 hour to stop reacting and start designing. And no, you don't have to be Elon Musk or Steve Jobs to deserve that hour. You just have to be someone who wants to feel alive again. Tomorrow morning, before the world gets to you, before the news, the feeds, the noise, give yourself that gift. 1 hour. Every day. For the rest of your life. Because the truth is, you don't become unstoppable by doing more. You become unstoppable when you protect the one thing no one else will protect for you, your clarity. And now, if this story helped you pause and think, then take a moment for yourself. Like the video, not for the algorithm, but as a promise to yourself. Subscribe, not just to Mystic English, but to this new identity you're ready to build. And comment below, my 1 hour starts now. Thank you for watching. We'll meet again in the next story. Until then, protect your hour and protect yourself.